Okay, so in today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how the fetch works with React, but this is going to be a simple tutorial. I'm not going to overcomplicate this. I'm going to create another tutorial about use effect, use state, and fetch all working together with each other. So subscribe for that. But in today's tutorial, I'm going to be going over what fetch is and how you can use it with React. So let's get started. So what is fetch? Fetch is basically a function within JavaScript, okay? And fetch basically provides us a way to fetch data from an API, okay? So fetch allows you to handle HTTP requests asynchronously, which means that your application can continue running while waiting for the server's response, okay? So this basically says that you can fetch data from an API and you can wait for the response before continuing forward with your application, okay, or with your function, whatever it's going to do. So a fetch is promise based, okay, so that basically means you can use whatever you would with a promise, like a sync and await. You can create an asynchronous function, and you can use the .then and .catch methods as well, and I'm going to be giving you examples of this. So the next thing is it's better error handling, which is true because with the .catch you can do better error handling than you would the normal way with something like this. This required you to do a lot of manual work. So there are two ways actually you can do error handling, which is one is the .catch which comes with the promise, and the other is using a try-catch block. So let's go into our examples. So this example is pretty simple. I just have a use state. It's going to store the data inside of it, and this is our fetch data function. And I know this isn't good practice. I'm just doing this as an example. Like I said, I will be creating another tutorial with use effect and use state and the fetch API, and that will be better explanation of how to combine all of them together. But this is a simple example. So when the data is loaded, we're going to map that out, and that's going to be inside of this, and I'm using Bootstrap for the styling, and I'm just going to display the title, and if it is a completed, meaning this is returning true or false. So if it's true, then I'm triggering this, and if it's false, I'm triggering this. That's all that is happening here. So let's do this. So I'm going to reload this, and what you will see is that I'm getting loading, and then I'm getting all of this data. So how is this happening? So what's happening is when this data state is null, I'm just triggering this. And how is this? This is by default null, so it's basically false in a sense, and that's why it's just doing the loading animation, and then that's happening, and our fetch data is triggered here. Okay, but now let's get into the actual fetch function, which is what is working behind the scenes and what this tutorial is about. So how the fetch is working is that it's taking in a URL, and you can just go to this website. This is a website, and this has posts, to-dos, etc., etc. So I'm just getting the to-dos, and since this is a promise, as you can see, this is returning a promise. What I can do with this is, while I am getting the data from my API, I want to wait for the response, and I can do that using the sync and await, and I'm using the await to tell it to, okay, you are getting data. I want you to stop whatever it is you're gonna do next until I have gotten my data. Then the response I'm getting here, and I'm using the .json method to say that, okay, whatever data you have gotten, turn it into JSON format. So I'm telling it to wait until you have converted the data into JSON format, and then I'm just setting the data. And for some reason, if you receive a 404 error or some other type of error, if this is in a try catch block, what is happening is try to get the data. If for some reason you cannot get the data, you have some kind of error, this is the error that you can then console log out, and you can just console log the error itself, or you can use the dot message, which will give you the message of whatever error you are getting. So this will then show you the error. Now I can't show you this in this example, how the error would work, but this is how you would do a try catch block with a fetch. Okay, so this is, you would get the data, wait for it to complete, convert it into JSON data, then the result you would just put in whatever variable or state you have. That is how the fetch works, and you are obviously seeing the example. This is the data we're getting, and just to show you what we are getting, I'm just going to console log this here. Okay, so this is the data we're getting, and this is a lot of data. That's why it's in two separate arrays. If I open this, you will see that it's completed false or true, which is false. And then this is the ID, the title, which is this, and the user ID, which I am not displaying. Okay, so this is how this is working. So I'm just gonna stop this, and now let's get into the other things about fetch, which is that yes, we have this way of doing, which is a try catch block, and we're getting data, we're getting the response, and then we're getting the result by converting it into JSON, and then we're just putting into our state. Now we are going to get our data, but this is the promise way of doing this, right? Because this is a promise, this is returning a promise, as you can see. So the thing with promises is that, and I'm making JavaScript tutorials, okay? Don't worry about that. I'm making asynchronous, async and wait and promise tutorials. We will be getting to those later. But right now, you can use three things with a promise, or any kind of function that is returning a promise, okay? And that is the dot then method, the dot catch method, and dot finally method. It's basically this one right here. And the difference between these three is the dot then runs after whatever we are fetching is complete. The dot catch is used for error handling, just like here. And the finally is whatever the response ended up being, finally will just run regardless of it was an error or not. So this is how it's working. I didn't put this here. And as you can see, we are still getting the data. And now let's move on to this, which is our fetch can have options, okay? And you would put those here, options. Okay, let me just take this to the top. And if you're having any problems with this, like I showed you in the console log, just put this in a use effect, nothing more. So the options are something that can add as an extra thing if you're doing other type of requests, because with API requests, right, you can do four things. You can do a post request, a get request, which is the default when you don't add any options, and then a put request and a delete request. And the difference between these three is that the get request is to get data, the post request is to submit some kind of data when creating some new, let's say, entry into our database. The put request is to update data in our database or update anything in our backend. And the delete request is something we use when we want to delete something in the backend or in our database. So these are the four types of requests. by default it's this, and most of the time it's this and this that gets used. And if you have some kind of request, right, you're putting in some kind of request, right, if you're doing a post request, for example, you would put in headers as well. There are many different type of headers. This is just one of them. Content type, which takes in application/JSON, which is basically telling that the data I'm submitting is this type of data. And this is the body, which will have all of the data that we're putting inside of it be submitted. Okay, we're submitting this type of data to the backend. Okay, so if you're confused about why there are two thens, also the reason is that whatever we return gets added into this, and this is just submitting the data to our state. Okay, so I changed this a little bit according to my post request that I'm sending. Okay, and before you saw that we had two thens, and I've just made it a single one now. Okay, and what's happening in this is I'm sending a post request. The content header is the same. Okay, JSON, and I'm doing JSON.stringify to make this into a string, and I'm just sending these options that we were getting. And in this, I'm making it in the synchronous function. I'm waiting for the response. I'm turning into JSON, and I'm console logging it out, and also I'm putting it in. And the reason why I've done this as an array is because we're getting an object back, because it's a single value, and because we're getting an object back, I'm putting it inside of an array, because we won't be able to use our map method unless we do this. So as you can see, I've already run it. I'm just going to refresh this, and by default it's null, and then we're just getting this. We are getting what we're sending. Let's change this to hi. Save this, and as you can see, we're getting hi back. So we are submitting data into our backend. Okay, we are doing a post request, and we're getting the data back. So that's how you use Fetch API. Trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Then we'll be creating full stack tutorials. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.